The most powerful gift we have is love. I do my best to lead with love.
Zeke, welcome to POVz. For anyone watching, this is a very full circle moment because Zeke and I became besties on Clubhouse, spending hours and hours together. I've never met in person, but today's the day.
And not even Clubhouse, some Zooms. Let's give all the media apps a little promo.
All of them. But thank you so much for being here. It's so nice to see you in person.
It's nice to meet you, see you.
Thank you so much. I can't wait to dive a little bit more into your backstory. Here on POVz, the purpose of this conversation is really to understand all of the pieces of you that have formed your POVz, your point of view on the world. So every interview here, we start off with somewhat of a deep question. You ready?
Let's go for it.
Do you think your family always has to be a part of your identity?
Yes, I do believe that my family always has to be a part of my identity. Having the unique experience of having a large celebrity family legacy in terms of who my father is, being Isaiah Thomas, it is especially noteworthy to me thinking in this moment that no, I can't separate the two.
Do you feel like there are ever times where that's put a lot of pressure on you because you come from such a celebrity family?
Pressures were put on me in different ways. And I had to, a lot of times, navigate different pathways for myself that were trying to be led by others. I still get asked this silly question to this day. Are you as good a basketball player as your dad? I'm 33 years old. Y'all would have heard about my NBA career by now. But just unreal expectations from the outside world that definitely, it'll mess with you. And then especially exploring my sexuality, what is masculine. These things were definitely interesting topics for me to explore.
Let's unpack some of those. Do you feel like you were fully comfortable to be your full self growing up?
No.
Tell me more.
And when you grow up, classified Black in America, in the places where I grew up, those are very different cultures and ways of dealing with the topic of race in their selective societies, not to mention sexuality. My mom has asked me, when did you know? Did you know at a young age? I'm like, yeah, I knew at a young age. I didn't know what to call it, the words, but now looking back, yes. Many other gay men have that experience of, knowing, we were born this way. Dealing with those different dynamics of the places where, again, I grew up. Indiana being that's the South. I make no bones. I mean, the Ku Klux Klan was founded in Indiana.
Wow.
The Klan would march at IU Bloomington during my time there. The freedom to be yourself and more open has been illuminated by social media, the clothing that we wear, and just general human growth, evolution, so to speak, of the mind. There's still a lot of things about the system and government that we all still have a lot of growing and learning to do.
Is there a moment that you can pinpoint, maybe in those moments where you didn't feel comfortable being your full self, where you initiated a conversation about it?
Let's say around my life, 18 to 23, I DJ'd and made my bread and butter pretty much DJing what they classify as, straight clubs. But I can remember when my manager told me that I needed to tone down the gay to continue to play these venues. Now, I fired him and my career definitely progressed, but there definitely was noticeable prejudice, not just from a sexuality, but also, racial. Those things existed.
You probably had two very different echo chambers that probably gave you different worldviews, right? You've got the Bloomington
Yeah.
You've got the New York City, but all the while, those prejudices were still there.
Yeah. And when you like to, say, like pinpoint a person, there were definitely just moments of definite individuals who helped along the way. There also weren't a lot of people who weren't trying to help me along the way.
How did you get from point A to point B of being open enough to now advocate for these very taboo issues when you had moments in your life where I feel like people were trying to box you in?
When I decided to go public with my story on Good Morning America, getting ready to tell the world that I was sexually assaulted, I knew that I had a responsibility to represent, but I didn't know the impact that it would have. I still get messages of people saying that you don't know that moment helped me, that moment helped me share my story. I look back at that moment as a young kid. I remember when you did that. So do I feel that I have a responsibility? Yes. Do I try to carry myself as so now? Especially.
That's a huge moment to be willing to use your voice to not only share your story, but to pave and blaze a trail for others to now speak up and share their story as well. For young people out there who maybe have a story to share or have a point of view they want to take on the world, but don't know how. They don't know how to take that first step and really put their voice out there. What advice would you give?
The impact that social media has had to be able to share things, to be able to communicate across the world. The little voice has a voice. Now we need to translate the little voice to voting.
That was such a great analogy. And I think that's something that we should all take on ourselves, to remember that we have a voice and we need to use it. And oftentimes that means voting, putting yourself out there and trying. And that's huge.
Voting is our biggest way to have a voice, especially in, modern democracies.
Yeah.
The majority of people don't vote.
But I will say record numbers of young people who are now registering and going out to vote are rising.
Absolutely.
So I have faith that Gen Z will lead the way.
I have faith as well. And that's the thing that you have to look back to, is we are making progress. There are major things in the world that we are seeing regression in certain ways, but we are making progress nonetheless by generation after generation after generation saying, no, we don't want to live this way.
Zeke, I'm so excited to bring us to our next segment on POVz, where we're going to start introducing other viewpoints from the larger Gen Z community. So keep an eye on your phone. We're going to send you some texts.
Oh boy.
And when you receive a POV, you're going to read it out loud and then react, because we want to hear where you stand.
Clubhouse was cool for like a month, but the app went so downhill. Now that we're getting out of the pandemic, people should only be having face-to-face conversations, not using conversations as a spectator sport by Clubhouse.
What are your thoughts?
I have to disagree, because I think that conversations are important to be had anywhere. There are a lot of ways to have conversations, and hell, I've even had people join my conversation in person on Clubhouse and had that whole dynamic. So I'm definitely a Clubhouse fan, but I'm also a fan of communicating in every way.
I totally agree. I think a conversation anywhere is a conversation to be had. And though I may not be on Clubhouse anymore, I'm so grateful that it connected me to people like you.
Yes.
And I'm happy we can bring that to the face-to-face space, because I do think in-person conversations sometimes can be more powerful.
Definitely.
Especially if it's a really hard topic.
Definitely, but sometimes in-person conversations don't need to be so formal.
I totally hear you. But you're right. I think a conversation anywhere is a conversation to be had.
People speak out about sexual assault for attention and to gain a following. How can we know who to believe? This is a very tough question and a tough topic to be discussed openly, but it needs to be discussed honestly. We believe survivors immediately. That's what we do. But there also is a process, and that process can involve the legal process. That things have to get investigated and go through the system. Things also sometimes go through the court of public opinion.
Have you ever heard someone say something like that in your own life? That maybe you've encountered someone who doesn't believe survivors? How do you have that conversation?
Having that conversation, it's not trying to convince somebody of the facts who has no business being in the conversation at all. The conversation really centers around that survivor. If you're not in that business, then you have no purpose in the conversation. I am the only gay person on my high school basketball team, and I'm always bullied for my sexuality. I love basketball, but I don't know if I can keep playing with all the hate. What do I do? No matter what your sexuality is, when you're not feeling a part of the team, that can have a detrimental effect, not only to you, but also that team. Now, basketball or athletics can be enjoyed anywhere. That person saying, I can't play basketball anymore, that's not true. There are definitely other places to enjoy basketball.
Did you ever experience anything like that? Did you play sports growing up?
I did play sports growing up, but I never experienced anything like that.
Well, that's great advice. Thank you for adding that in.
DJing isn't a real job. Anyone with a phone and the SoundCloud app thinks they're the next big thing. DJing is a real job because you just called it a thing, and people do make money off of it. I'm one to know. But there still is a talent to the craft. There are some great DJs who make some great playlists, and I'm happy to have them now in the crew. I don't think that we should disclude people from being DJs. Music is an inviting community, and that's what it should be about.
You are a DJ. It is a real job because it is your job.
Yes.
But I think that's so important that we don't exclude people from the community and being musicians.
I feel so unsafe clubbing, knowing how dangerous it can be. I want to have fun and go out, but I worry about getting sexually assaulted. What should I do? Nightlife's a fast thing. Alcohol, drugs, that's the environment that you're playing in. Am I going to say it's 100% safe? No, because I've had horrible experiences myself. Just because that one place may feel unsafe doesn't mean that place down the street will.
Thank you for sharing that.
Everyone successful these days has rich and famous parents. Nepotism is so real. There are many successful people who started from nothing, had a very difficult time building their business or inherited their wealth in a tragedy. So saying that everybody is successful, you have to define what success really is. Is success having a lot of followers on Instagram? Is success just having the money? I do not believe that everyone who has a lot of money automatically breeds success.
I love how you bring in so many different scenarios because I think that shows that there are so many different ways to think of something. Have you ever felt that way? Have you ever felt judged because of your family?
Absolutely, I felt judged because of my family, but I think that's also something that comes with the territory I've learned. I've worked my butt off for sure, and I know my story. I chose a vastly different path than my father's business success, which would be basketball, NBA. I'm not in basketball. I went music. But looking back, I released 4 singles. It was on iTunes, Billboard magazine. That's success. And I have to accept that win, to have that moment, to have that opportunity, to be able to create music. I have a talent, an ear, But having the opportunity, yeah, that's special.
I love that. And I love how you brought up how success is subjective and we all have different definitions of it. And I don't think any of us should even try to compare ourselves to Beyonce because none of us will ever reach even close to that level. But thank you for reminding us of that.
Zeke, drop a hot take.
What have you got for us?
My hot take is everyone can do better. The most powerful gift we have is love. I do my best to lead with love, to help people when I can, to put people in opportunities where they can succeed, because I want everyone to win.
Love it. And Zeke, my last question for you before you go is for all of Gen Z that could be listening to this conversation. If you had a microphone that could reach every young person out there, what would you want them to know?
Vote. Because if we don't vote, then none of what you're fighting for will get done.
It's a very powerful message. I hope that everyone listening will vote, because that really is the way to use our voice. And you're right, we can talk the talk, but if we're not putting that into action and going out there to vote for what we believe in, what is it all for? So Zeke, thank you for being on POVz today, for being so vulnerable and sharing your stories and your experiences that have made you the amazing person you are. And I'm so grateful you came on the show.
Thank you.
Bring it in. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're such a natural. You just dropped so much wisdom. How do you feel?
I feel good.
Yeah.
I feel like I brain dumped.
You really are someone who embodies what it means to speak up about what matters. And I just so admire you for that. Before you go, can we take a selfie?
Absolutely.
All right.